Usually people are bullish about both at the same time, and also the same arguments are used to show that both are going to pump or become successful in the very near future. Obviously, there are similarities between these two platforms, but there are also fundamental differences. So the question is, which one should one invest in? Which one should one be bullish about? And is it true that a rising tide lifts all boats? In this video, I'm going to try and answer some of those questions. But remember that this isn't financial advice. Do your own research. Now, I've done a little bit of scribbling so that I can basically speed up the video a little bit. You have XRP there on the left-hand side, and you have XLM on the right-hand side, also called Stellar. The similarities are that they both have very large communities, very engaged and very active communities. And some of these community members overlap quite a bit, of course, because again, if you consider what each token is doing, then you'd understand why. The blockchains are absolutely top notch for both systems. You have a speed of transaction speed of between 3 to 5 seconds measured on both. So they're on par when it comes to speed. Again, they both have exceedingly low fees. I've written low fees here, but I really should write microscopic fees. And of course, both tokens intend to be used internationally without borders. XRP is 2 years older than XLM. 2012 was the launch date of XRP, and 2014 was the launch date of XML. XRP was released, of course, by Ripple Labs, while XML was launched by Stellar Development Foundation. The first difference is actually the goal of the platform. So for XRP, it's to facilitate cross-border payments. That's the fundamental raison d'etre of the blockchain, to facilitate cross-border payments. And this is done by providing liquidity to financial institutions that need to carry out these transactions. Along the way, of course, it's picked up other functionalities like CBDCs and remittances, etc., which I'm going to talk about later on. XML, on the other hand, is aimed at banking individuals and small businesses. So it basically aims to provide a decentralized platform, right, for connecting financial institutions and payment systems and individuals. So the clientele is a bit less large, but more numerous in number. We're going to look at those a bit later. Okay. Now, if you look at the supply of XRP, 100 billion XRP tokens were mined and released all at the same time and distributed appropriately. Ripple Labs themselves have a massive chunk of XRP, which is one of the reasons why, of course, people are saying that they're not that decentralized, because of the power that Ripple Labs wields. But then there are proponents of XRP that would argue otherwise. Again, we're going to talk about that later. The supply of XML is half of that, and people like that. There are 5 billion tokens out at the moment, and these were released gradually via distribution, ICOs, and airdrops. And then we have the market cap. Now, of course, the market cap changes. Actually, just a couple of days ago when I made my last video, the market cap was sitting at something like 28 billion. Now it's gone to 35 billion. That's a significant rise in just a couple of days or so. The market cap of XLM is about an eighth of that at 5.8 billion. Also, that's gone up slightly since the last time I checked. So the gap between these two always ranges somewhere between 8 and 10x of each other. So half of the number of tokens, but an eighth of the market cap. So just doing the maths, it would seem that XML does have a larger upside than a downside than XRP does, without taking in consideration any of the macro factors. Another difference is, of course, all of these tokens were released at launch and distributed appropriately, like I said, whereas there was a gradual token release when it came to XML, which ensured a more decentralized distribution. Also, the tokens are more evenly distributed amongst the hodlers than XRP. XRP is a little bit more concentrated with large institutions, whales, and of course Ripple Labs themselves. So people are slightly wary of that. It's one of the things that almost bothered me a little bit when I first started looking into XRP. But then when I figured out what the Ripple Labs was doing with the XRP, I felt a little bit better about the situation, and it doesn't bother me anymore. And again, because of the above, of course, XRP is perceived to be centralized. Of course, this is partly also due to the fact that they're being sued at the moment by the SEC. The fact that there is somebody to sue in the first place kind of points to a centralized platform. And of course, the power that Ripple Labs wields when it comes to, promoting XRP, institutional involvement in XRP, the fact that I have so many tokens, kind of gives them the perception, of course, of centralization. And of course, the consensus that they use at the moment is an algorithm called XRP Ledger Consensus Protocol, which relied on a network of trusted validators chosen by Ripple to validate the transactions. I think something has changed about that, but I need to look more into it. Even the fact that Ripple Labs has the influence in choosing who the validators are kind of points towards centralization. It adds to that perceived centralization. But I do believe that anybody else can run a node. You might not just be part of the consensus. Whereas on the other side, XML is perceived as decentralized because there is no such thing as anybody choosing any validators. Consensus is reached by a decentralized group of validators. People who are more idealist when it comes to cryptocurrencies would tend to go for XML. People that don't want to, quote unquote, get involved in deep state stuff, as I've had in some of my as comments in some of my videos, probably gravitate more towards XML than they would XRP. The centralizing body when it comes to XRP, as people perceive, of course, is Ripple Labs, who is being sued at the moment. And then you have this Stellar Development Foundation, who are kind of like an NGO. They're non-governmental organization. Doesn't mean that they're non-profit. They're just an NGO, and they oversee development on the Stellar network. And someone's got to be there overseeing, the development. Of course, the blockchain is also open source when it comes to XML, but on XRP, it's closed source. Again, so that adds to the transparency of XML and the perception of decentralization. The obvious thing that people now consider is which should one invest in? Again, it depends on who you are, what you believe, what you're looking for. Some people have refused to invest in XRP because of the involvement of such large organizations and governments, etc. Some people have gone all in on XRP because they see the massive potential and they realize that there doesn't need to be global mass adoption for it to actually pump. So some people see the potential in that. Again, idealists might not be happy about the CBDC things, and they might not be happy about the perception of centralization. Now, if you look at the target audience for each one and the people that are going to make the coins moon, on the XRP side, of course, you have governments, the governments of Singapore, governments of the BRICS countries, for instance, and their CBDCs are going to be using XRP as all the data points. So them acquiring XRP in such masses, that's going to add to the high demand of the token and it being mooned. Of course, again, we have the institutions. So these are the established institutions that deal with finance, that deal with central banks in collaboration with governments. So we're talking about the gigantic financial organizations like the IMF, etc. They will also be looking at XRP because XRP is the only one that has the liquidity to be able to do what they need to do. Of course, these guys are not very happy about decentralized systems. They want centralized systems, just like governments. So the perception of centralization of XRP is actually going to work in their favor concerning these guys. Of course, we have the big banks. We've heard the JP Morgans of the world, the BlackRocks, the Santander banks, all of these people that have either been testing or are about to start testing XRP for cross-border transactions and intra-bank transactions of really, really large amounts because they're going to need a lot of liquidity and at low fees. So the combination of those two things only points to XRP. And of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum are out of the question because of how slow and expensive they are to operate. And of course, the infrastructure level. So we're going to have infrastructure installed across countries to be able to hold liquidity and basically do all the transfers from these countries from one to the other. Again, XRP is going to be required for that when the time comes, and that's going to moon XRP. On the XML side, this is what's going to moon XML when the time comes. The masses. Okay, so we're talking about government organizations, we are centralized bodies. But on this side, we're talking about, billions of people on the planet who themselves are individually unbanked. So you're talking about people in rural areas, people in countries where they don't have the facilities to be banked, people that might not be able to fulfill KYC requirements, people who might not be able to provide the correct addresses, etc. The masses, or people who just don't want to go with traditional banks, or they're not eligible in one way or the other, they are going to all gravitate towards XML. Small businesses. So we're not talking about the giant banks or institutions. We're talking about the small businesses that deal with, day-to-day trading that needs to charge people internationally. For instance, let's say I'm a salesman or an artist somewhere in Botswana, and I won't be able to sell digital products in the United States and in America, in the United States and the UK. I can use the XML platform to set up a payment system to make it absolutely seamless, and I get paid. They get their digital product delivered over the internet. There are payment methods at the moment like PayPal and credit cards, etc. But not every part of the world has that facility. Some of these businesses are not eligible to participate in PayPal, for instance. So something like XML is going to make all of that go away. And of course, mass adoption. That's what's going to moon XML. In terms of numbers, actually XML has the higher potential of mass adoption and upward movement. So when it comes to price, XML has a higher upside, but in my estimation, it's going to take XML longer to get there because now we have to push for mass adoption. We have to convince the masses that this is what they need to use. There needs to be a kind of PR campaign that's launched in different countries. It just seems like it's harder to actually achieve. Whereas XRP, the banks themselves are motivated because if they don't get involved in this, they're just going to miss out. And then you have governments, everyone moving to digital currencies. There's a higher motivation on the government side and the institution side and the banks and infrastructure side. And they have the will, the money, and the ability, they have the mandate to pull these things off. And they're already doing it, as all the data that we have points to. So it is easier for basically the fireworks to go off on XRP side. So if you ask me, it all depends on who you are and what you believe. XRP, XML. I've noticed that a lot of people just own both, and they invest a little bit here, a little bit there. High tide lifts all boats. Personally, I don't actually hold any XML at the moment, but it's something I might look into because I actually like what I see. I just think it might take a little bit longer to get to the place where people want to get with XRP. But I like the project. Again, not financial advice. Do your own research, and I'll see you in the next video.